All those who are holding tickets outside will get in as fast as they can. I'm speaking out to you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking to the crowd on the outside, who seem to be standing rather reluctant to come in, and we're going to start this very soon.
May I have the envelope, please?
And the Oscar for Best Picture is presented to...
And the Oscar goes 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 to...
And the Oscar goes...
And the Oscar goes...
And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to is a phrase that we have heard 92 times and counting. The movie title that follows that phrase lives within a relatively small group of notoriety. These movies are the quote-unquote best of that particular year. They are part of a collective of films that need to be looked at differently because of their relevance in pop culture. However, are these movies actually the best of all time? Even the best of that year? Are these the quintessential must-watch, hands down the most significant films to come out during the 100-plus year history of cinema? Most would say no, and we would echo that. This doesn't answer the question as to why films were chosen. Only the Academy will ever know. However, we've challenged ourselves to dive into all the Best Picture winners and explore how they compare to one another. How we would rate them and how critics rated them in the past, these movies will be seen in progression starting from 1927 up until present day. So welcome to Worthy, the podcast breakdown of every Best Picture winner from past to present. This week, we are talking about the Best Picture winner and first Academy Awards ceremony, which covered films that met the Academy's requirements from the summer of 1927 to the summer of 1928. I'm Ben.
And I'm John.
So Worthy is the exploration of each Best Picture winner, as well as the progression of the Academy over time. I myself have been able to watch and critique each winner prior to the creation of this podcast.
And I've only watched a handful of the films throughout the years.
So a question I want to pose to John is Wings worthy of the Best Picture Academy Award of 1927-28? So welcome to Worthy. I'm Ben.
And I'm John.
So before we get into the first episode of Worthy, we kind of want just to talk about ourselves for a bit, not to be egotistical or anything or narcissistic. It's just more just to say like who we are as cinephiles and where we are in our own careers and our own personal lives and why we feel like and why we wanted to do this project. So John, why don't you give a little bit of background about yourself just to give the audience a little taste?
So Ben and I are both in our mid-20s. We both went to school together in upstate New York. We both studied in film and television while we were at school, and we both kind of dug our heels deep into the history of film. But even after we finished, we got a strong degree and a strong understanding of the basic kind of technical elements, as well as kind of getting our hands dirty. We still want to spend a lot of time and just really go back and watch as many films as possible. And we thought this was the best way to really dive deep into Hollywood and American films by starting at the very beginning of the Academy and kind of working our way and seeing the transition of history.
Yeah, and during our time at school, with me and John, we really bonded over the Oscars and watching them together like every year. At school, we also bonded over films like Clerks and Star Wars. I can remember walking to John's dorm room and seeing his whole Kevin Smith collection, and my jaw drop and be like, "There's another guy out there that likes Kevin Smith just as much as me." Like I was really excited about that. So me and John have always been on the same, I guess, wavelength of our movie tastes and what we really like and what we enjoy, which really helps for us with discussing these movies. And this just overall interest of the Academy Awards starting from the beginning up until present day. And so that's why we wanted to do this project, to watch every single film that did win Best Picture, because it just felt to us that it was a continuation of our film school, of all the teachings that we did have, but just to advance a little bit more, because I guess the best way to learn is just to watch it and experience it yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. We kind of felt that it was a necessary kind of step to just kind of watch as much classic film, to learn from these classic films, and really just see how they've progressed over time, as it gives us so much information about how things are today and just how we've grown, basically, not as only as a culture, but also as a technical medium, as well as the actual art form. So the way we'll be kind of jumping in and looking at the films is we're obviously going to dive deep into the history of the Academy and kind of learn more about the members behind it, how they kind of decided on the particular winners, as well as the history of the different winners and the kind of tracking the history of specific winners as you go through history, and then tracking the best winners and kind of somewhat comparing them as we go along, as well as kind of giving a defining grade in our opinion of what we think if it's worthy or not, but also just kind of giving it a defining grade on the film overall and what we thought of it.
Yeah, and it's not to say that to take this grade as like the word of God, because we are quote unquote experts in our own way of where we are in our own lives. We've done professional stuff. I've been very fortunate where I work at a big television network to win an Emmy and be a part of that kind of those kinds of productions. And John has been working on a lot of new media fronts and doing his own screenwriting, which is where our own professional experiences do come from for this sort of subject. But we're not like, we don't call ourselves film critics. We are cinephiles, but even putting that kind of name to it is also very odd for us to say. But we really do enjoy movies. And for me personally, I hate to label things just because you are your own person. You're able to do and see and evaluate things through your own eyes and with your own thoughts, and your brain it's just all unique to yourself. And so that experience of its own is what's going to help me and John decipher and evaluate these films, because there really is a lot to break down. So that's who we are. John, is there anything else we should gloat about ourselves before letting the first episode of Worthy go on?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth noting that we aren't professionals. This is an engaging conversation that we would like to open up, hopefully, more and more as we get some more listeners here and we get to hear more opinions and hear whether people think a certain film was worthy and we said it was maybe not, or we said it was worthy, in fact. So we really want to open up into like a bigger dialogue and grow here at Worthy and just kind of dive deeper into the history as we all learn together and, become better cinephiles. So before we jump into the Wings conversation, I'd like to take a moment and go down the lineage in the creation of the Academy.
Definitely.
So this is directly following the Academy's website, going through a couple years of their initial inception, as well as the following couple of years. During a dinner at his home, MGM studio chief Louis B. Mayer and his guests talked about creating an organization that would help benefit the film industry. A week later, 36 invitees from all of the creative branches of the film industry dined at Los Angeles Ambassador Hotel to hear a proposal to found the International Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Articles of incorporation were soon presented and officers were elected with Douglas Fairbanks as president. Between that evening and when the official articles of incorporation for the organization were filed on May 4th, 1927, the International was dropped from the name, becoming the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, or what we'll be calling AMPAS. 1928, Awards of Merit. One of the first Academy committees was the Awards of Merit. The 7-person committee suggested to the board that awards be presented in 12 categories. The Academy published its first book in 1928, a report on incandescent illumination, based on a series of academic-sponsored seminars attended by 150 cinematographers. 1929, the first Academy Awards. The first ceremony accounted for all films made from the summer of 1927 to the summer of 1928. The voting for the Academy Award for Best Picture was in the hands of AMPAS founders Douglas Fairbanks, Sid Grauman, Louis B. Mayer, Mary Pickford, Joseph Schneck. Now, Ben, before we move on, I want to ask if you see those 5 names in front of you. Is there something that stands out between all of those?
Yeah, there is. Mary Pickford being one of the first, being the only female, not the first, the only female of the group to be part.
Literally the only female.
Yeah, literally the only female.
Out of 5, right?
And there are 2 other big names, Sid Grauman and Louis B. Mayer. Mayer being the founder of MGM and Grauman, Chinese Grauman's Theater, Grauman's Chinese Theater. I think that's the actual name of it.
Yeah.
But these were the titans, I guess you could say, of the industry.
Definitely. And I wanted to stop for a second and talk about Mary Pickford simply because not only is she a name that we don't really hear very often, especially out of these 5 names. She is just a woman that kind of stands out against a full background of an industry really dominated by men. So in
Yeah, she's a badass.
She's truly a badass. In 1916, Pickford and Cecil B. DeMille helped found the Hollywood Studio Club, which was a dormitory for young women involved in the motion picture industry, aimed to basically avoid any abuse for young women, as well as like fair and stable housing for women in the industry. She continued to push for higher pay and full authority over her productions in the films she starred in. And she was also the first leading lady to score a $1 million deal in the 20s. In 1919, Pickford, along with W.D. Griffith, Charlie Chaplin, and Douglas Fairbanks, formed an independent film production company, United Artists, that you'll see create tons of popular films and even have theaters still across the entire U.S. today.
So yeah, United Artists is still going.
Exactly. Yeah, I just wanted to give a little shout out to Mary Pickford, just because I think she needed a little spotlight, especially amongst all those men in the entire academy.
Yeah, especially for helping to create a system, which I unfortunately having to say, like, we definitely need more of today in today's Hollywood industry. So it's really great that there was a semblance of that early on, but it was definitely lost, along the way.
Yeah, I think it just been kind of a spotlight on the industry to really show her and really show her off, but also kind of shows that hasn't changed as much as we would like to think. Women still are always considered kind of like second in the entertainment industry for some reason, but I think it's just up to the men in the entertainment industry to really step up and kind of speak for the women there and have more women's voices just in general across the board. So shout out to Mary Pickford. All right, Ben, I want you in the audience to close their eyes because we're going into the Academy Awards.
But before, just don't close your eyes if you're driving.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. Don't crash. Please don't crash.
Focus on the road.
Yeah, please don't crash.
All right, I'm closing my eyes.
It's May 26th, 1929. The average cost of a movie ticket is 35 cents with the option for additional 5-cent popcorn. But tonight is a different night out. Instead of seeing a film, you're getting dressed up to honor motion pictures in the blossoming industry. You walk into the pale structure of the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel and are greeted with 300 other guests in fine attire. The Academy members make up the majority of the crowd, but there's a $5 charge for guests, or what would be $75 in 2020. As you sit down to your pre-assigned tables, you hear murmurs from the surrounding attendees complaining about the 3-month wait for the award shows, as winners were announced all the way back in February. The lights dim as Douglas Fairbanks walks to the small podium as the first Academy Awards begin.
So after immediately hearing all of that, and what a great description it was, especially keeping my eyes closed, very dreamy voice you have right there, John.
You were right there.
Yeah, I really did feel like I was there, and it's just amazing because the first thing that stands out to me is that they knew the winners. I know, today with the Academy, we can tell who's going to win some categories, but the fact that they knew every single winner going into this first Academy Awards makes it seem like why are we even here? But it is a celebration of the industry. And I think it gets lost sometimes, especially today, what the Academy is supposed to represent.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely to push forward those artists, and we'll get further into the representation of what the Academy and the original 7 members kind of wanted this Academy to represent and what they wanted to push. But I think at the time being, it was almost a status symbol to be there, to be in the show, even though you're waiting, months and months and months to even get down and give that award to the entire group and audience. It's still something that I think those people in the audience are very proud to be there. It's a select group that are honored to be represented in the start of this industry. But it's really hard to know, it's like the beginning of this industry. It's hard to see what it was like back then. We're talking about the 20 years that this industry was already a thing, motion pictures only being since the late 1800s.
It's just interesting because you're part of this I don't want to say prestigious, but it's definitely a big thing to be there, and it's especially for a film like Wings, which we'll get into. It was released in 1927, and it's being awarded in 1929. So there's just this huge gap of time in between when the movie came out and the awards, and it's I can only imagine how like what it would have been like to have been there to like first see Wings and to have that like huge impact to last almost a whole year and a half. Like there are rarely any movies today that are like that stay for a whole year in people's minds and to still say like, wow, that was the best picture.
Yeah. I think that it has to do with like the high demand of just entertainment these days, and that the demand of content in general. You know, back then it was like 4 films, 5 films that really dominated the year. So it was so easy to just like kind of pick one that really stood out and really like lobby behind that.
It's also much easier for everyone just to, again, make their own content. There are just so many different forms of it. But just going back to like when Wings came out, we'll get into it more. It was just an experience. It was an experience to be in the theater. They did a lot to really put a production on for it. So just hearing that description of like the ceremony and just knowing who won, and it's just so strange compared to like what we're dealing, or like what we deal with today with the Academy. Yeah, like we're used to something completely different, but it's pretty cool. Like I kind of wish you did know who won, and then the ceremony is just like, well, we're just going to praise the hell out of these movies. We're praising the industry, and again, like I said before, I just don't think that really gets recognized enough or even at all today.
Would you rather have it that the winners are announced before the show even happens?
Selfishly, no, because I love to fill out my own Oscar ballots every year, and I want to be right.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, you have done an incredible job always being like almost exactly right every year, and I get so frustrated by that. But it's like it is almost like a sporting event, at times. But also, it would be cool to kind of be like to know like who won, and then there's so much like drama that gets taken out of it, but that opens up so many more opportunities to just talk about the films in general.
Yeah,
and
I
just think that's something that gets lost.
Definitely. I think at this point of time, it's not being filmed. It's not on TV. It's a very different form of the Academy Awards, and it's not really about the glitz and glamour. It's not about seeing your favorite, celebrity in a dress or a really nice suit. It's about the films and what they're there to represent and what they think is worthy of being under that Academy label. It's like so different than what we think of the Academy Awards today, definitely. There are 12 categories for the Academy's first Merit Awards. Engineering effects goes to Roy Pomeroy for Wings. Art direction, William Cameron Menzies for The Dove. Cinematography, Charles Rosher and Carl Struess, Sunrise. Writing titles, and now these are the caption titles for silent films. Joseph Farnham for no specific film. Now you'll notice that certain awards can be given out for not only specific films, whether the artist worked on that film or not. It could be for their collective work over the past year or two, especially when we're talking about the first Academy Awards, which took place from 27 to 28.
Yeah, a very again, another odd thing about this first Academy Awards ceremony where it was more about the artist rather than the actual product.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Writing directly for the screen. Now, this is basically what we would assume as original screenplay, which was winner to Ben Hecht for Underworld. Writing for based on a material for another medium, what we would now call adapted writing. Benjamin Glazer for Seventh Heaven. Direction for comedy picture, Louis Milestone for Two Arabian Nights. And then there is a direction for drama picture, which is Frank Borzage for Seventh Heaven. For Best Actress, Janet Gaynor. She is the first Best Actress winner, as she was honored for the combination of 3 film roles, Seventh Heaven, Street Angel, and Sunrise. Now, and how do you feel about the summary of combining multiple films to represent an artist or an actress or any artist on a film production?
I like it. I like it because this, again, coming back a little bit to the present day, there's a lot of times where an actor or an actress will come out with one film and they are, they're winning more for what they did that year. Everyone talks about the McConaissance with Matthew McConaughey, how it wasn't just Dallas Buyers Club. It was it was also for True Detective that everyone was like, wow, he was so good, and that makes it seem so much better his role. So just the fact that someone's winning for 3 movies, I think that's kind of cool. Would I want it now to be like, Leonardo DiCaprio gets nominated for 3 films or 2 films he comes out for that year? Maybe not. But I think, again, like, this is still like really interesting, and it does still happen today where we're sometimes praising the actor for their body of work or maybe multiple things that come out that year just because either their range or just they're really good.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's this kind of structure of organizing these awards have kind of faded away. Yet at the same time, actors still kind of get this leverage. Like, they still have multiple performances in a year, and sometimes it's almost counted in their nominee or their award for winning. So it's like kind of like a weird silent rule that still kind of exists, but it's not official because when they get their Academy Award, it's for a certain film.
Yeah, exactly. And it's actually interesting because one of the other categories for cinematography, so Sunrise won for Charles Rocher and Carl Stross were the cinematographers for that, but they were competing against just one other guy, George Barnes, and it was 3 separate nominations. So George Barnes wasn't nominated necessarily wasn't just one nomination for 3 films. It was 3 separate nominations for 3 separate films, and he still lost, which sucks, for him. But again, like, it's just really interesting because how many times would we ever see a cinematographer even just getting multiple nominations in the same year? I don't remember that ever happening, especially recently.
Roger Deakins.
It's amazing how like Deakins is now a 2-time winner after just like 40 years of never getting anything.
Just so many nominations and never winning.
Yeah. But that's a whole other discussion for a way later episode for this, focusing on right now. Yeah, and also just like the writing categories are really interesting too because we have 3 writing categories. Basically, the 2 ones that we still see today for the screenplays, but then also for the title cards in the movies. I mean, for silent films, like the title card is something creative. It's not just like I guess the typical thing that we always see of just like the white text on the black background. Like they go like really in depth. Some of these movies, like Wings, it's always backdropped against like a set of clouds, like always motion behind it.
I think we'll definitely talk about the differences between Wings and Sunrise when it comes to title cards, because they do title cards in such drastically different ways, and both so original and so unique and like powerful for each film. And it's like crazy that is considered like part of the art form at the time. It's something that we like never consider, but it was like such a helpful part of the medium to understand the context of the film, understand dialogue. It just was so helpful to really just digest an entire film. Without titles, like Wings might not make much sense, honestly. I think Sunrise is a film we'll talk about more. It really just helps glue films together at this time. Let's take a second for direction. And I mentioned there's both comedy picture and drama picture. So it's something that we definitely
the Golden Globes?
Yeah, what is this? The Golden Globes? Come on. It's something that we don't see in the Oscars anymore.
No. But it's interesting how it is split up because it's just that the typical just like comedy and drama, like those are the only 2 genres of a film or even a stage play in theater. So it's just interesting how it's broken up, and they recognize, well, there are comedy movies and there are drama movies, and they're 2 totally different art forms. And again, like going back to today, you would never see that. It's rare that a comedy director is nominated, especially like today.
Yeah, definitely. Part of me makes perfect sense why they're separated, especially nowadays where comedy films get so undershadowed or overshadowed in the entire industry, and especially in the Academy Awards. But at the same time, it feels a little odd to separate these 2 categories into like what is worthy in each section. But if I had to pick one or the other, I would rather prefer this, having 2 separate awards for directing.
You would?
I would, yes, because I think there's such totally different directing styles that I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it to like acknowledge more comedy films just in general in the Academy. But I think we'll get a better picture of that as we slowly progress through the Academy Awards.
Yeah. No, I would disagree, but just because not every film, especially today, is not a comedy or not a drama, it's so different. Like how do you factor in like big action movies? Like that's not really a comedy or a drama. It's an action movie.
Film. Yeah, probably would go into the drama just because it's an action film. That's dramatic in itself. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it probably wouldn't work very well nowadays, just because it's films over the entire 100-year history plus have kind of melded and merged genres. So it's like so many films are like merging and crossing over dramas. Like we use the term dramedy constantly. So like, how would you nominate directing for a dramedy? So it makes sense why it kind of fades away. All right, best actor goes to Emil Jannings in The Way of All Flesh and The Last Command. And the outstanding picture for production goes to Paramount Famous Lasky for Wings. Unique and artistic picture goes to Fox for Sunrise. So we're getting two different awards here, Ben. What do you think of the separation between an outstanding picture and the unique and artistic picture?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest thing about the first Academy Awards, and the big thing about this episode is we have two Best Picture winners, technically.
Yeah, neither of them say Best Picture, so which is Best Picture?
Well, if we're going by what the Academy has adopted following this ceremony, they technically call the Outstanding Picture win for Wings as the first Best Picture winner. So unique and artistic picture category. Not getting totally into it right now, but that was just cut after the ceremony. So it's so interesting that we have two Best Picture winners, because it has never been done after that. It will never ever happen again. So for me, if we're talking about technicality, Wings is the Best Picture winner of 1927.
Interesting.
What do you think?
Well, I'm always going to go by Academy's rule because that's what they want to define their history as. So I'll classify Wings as the Best Picture, but there's a reason why Sunrise is in there. And I think when we begin to compare the two, we'll understand the difference between the unique and artistic picture for Sunrise and an outstanding picture. What is an outstanding picture compared to the unique and artistic picture? Before we get into that,
I just want to add one more thing to that. We do have to call Sunrise a Best Picture winner, though, because it was, for all intents and purposes, still technically a Best Picture winner. It won for unique and artistic picture, so that does count. It just doesn't count to the idea that it is a Best Picture winner that we know of today.
Definitely, when this award show happened, it's not like they said one is better than the other. These are both high merits of awards for these films.
Yeah, the only thing that I can think of and equate it to is in football when a player wins MVP versus when they win Offensive Player of the Year. So it's like, the MVP is Wings and the Offensive Player of the Year is Sunrise. That's the only thing I can equate it to, because it is just so different to what we know of today. There's no runner up. There's no just this is the Best Picture and this is. I mean, you sort of get that with the Golden Globes, again, with the drama and comedy, but it's a toss up. When kind of talking about this, it's just so weird. And that's why I love talking about it.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I think we'll definitely jump into that more. Before we continue on to Wings, which is the main topic of discussion today, I want to talk a little bit about the special awards. Up until the 1950s Academy Award ceremony, the Academy Honorary Awards were called Special Awards. Charles Chaplin was the first to receive the special award for his writing, directing, acting, and producing of The Circus. Although he was originally a Best Actor, Best Writer, and Best Comedy Director nominee, Chaplin was removed or nullified from those competitive categories so that he could receive the honorary award. Who would be that person today, Ben?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that, because does that person now have to, if we were to equate that to today, does that person then have to star, act, and direct in the same movie? Because there have been multiple winners across the Academy's history that's won Best Picture, they directed and starred in it. But for something like that, like an honorary award, the people that come to my mind are Scorsese, Spielberg, and as an actor, Meryl Streep. To me, those are just people that okay, well, obviously they're the best at their craft, so we're just going to give them the honorary award instead of giving them the Academy Award. So it's for Scorsese, it's well, do we have to keep nominating him? He's the best. Why can't we just keep giving him honorary awards for every movie that he makes?
Definitely.
So it's just it's almost funny that Chaplin was well, you're too good for right now, and we don't want to just take everything away from everyone else, because if you were nominated, you would obviously win.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll get like a better understanding of what the honorary award is over time. I think they just basically took Charlie Chaplin out of the entire running. I've read a little bit of history of Charlie Chaplin, that some people in the industry were not just a fan of him and his kind of antics as a guy in the industry. So that could have been the reason why they removed him, but they still gave him this special award, which has like gone on to be such a significant award, now labeled as the honorary award for the Academy Awards. So I think we'll get like a better understanding, because I don't think we really see someone like Charlie Chaplin getting nominated for that honorary award. He was like a one-man circus, truly.
Yeah.
No pun intended. Or pun intended.
Yeah. If we're thinking of like someone who direct and acts in their own movies, like I think Eastwood's the biggest, most recognizable name that kind of fits that mold, but there really aren't that many people who direct and act in the same movies anymore. It is very rare, especially then to then be honored for both.
Exactly.
Is another rare feat.
Definitely. Before we move off of the awards and the Academy show in general, I want to acknowledge just a couple snubs. Now, in 1920,
there are always snubs.
Of course, always snubs, and we'll go through the snubs throughout all the years of the Academy Awards. In 1929, there was a significant change in the industry with The Jazz Singer, as it introduced a talkie into the picture. Would now have direct dialogue and singing that was directly recorded and then presented in front of theaters. So some people were asking, maybe in 1929, The Jazz Singer's there, like that should be at least nominated. You're not seeing an outstanding picture. You're not seeing a unique and artist picture. Why do you think that wasn't added in the Academy Awards?
Well, because it was just so new. And even though the industry was so young at the time, it was just like, whoa, we can have sound, we can have dialogue. Like that's part of the experience, because part of it does take away a little bit, especially with Wings, going a little bit into it. There was like a whole road show with it, with orchestration, sound effects that they would, physically do in the space of the theater. Whereas like with recorded sound, it's just part of the reel, and you almost take away some of that like added effects, some of those live, almost practical effects. Mm-hmm. And but The Jazz Singer was nominated for adapted writing based on material from another medium, but it did not win. So it's not like it was completely forgotten about. It just wasn't part of the best picture discussion.
Yeah, it's kind of a cheat code in a way. It's also weird to throw in a talkie with all these other nominees that aren't, it's kind of hard to compare like a silent film to a talkie and then kind of relate them one to one, because it's just kind of, it becomes a different medium at that point and starts to evolve and change, and you can introduce a lot more into a film. I've actually never seen The Jazz Singer. I don't know about you, but I've also heard it's not that great of a film.
As we're coming to this podcast, maybe introducing ourselves as cinephiles, but we're not the most, I guess, historical cinephiles, more like an up-to-date to present day cinephile.
It's a film journey, almost a film school like experience to go through every Academy Award.
Absolutely. And kind of referencing back, like I've seen a bulk of these movies. Like this is really my second time going through this, like, these movies, and I've learned so much just from like watching each of these movies and understanding it. And there are some things I think I learned from just watching these movies that I did not learn in our film school.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
You just get such a better sense and idea of like, of what I guess you would call Oscar bait, but just like what is, to reference the title, this worthy of these Academy Awards.
Exactly. The best film school is films, right?
Yeah.
All right. There's one more snub that I want to acknowledge, which is The General, 1926, starring Buster Keaton. So Buster Keaton's honestly a significant actor, performer, director from the silent era for his comedic takes and his comedic films. Do you think there's a reason why he was left off, or it's just not the cup of tea for the audience? People just looked at Charlie Chaplin as the kind of the it guy for comedy at the time.
Well, the movie came out in 1926, right?
Yeah.
So it didn't meet the Academy's requirements. Like that would be my best answer, which sucks because again, like the first ceremony and the following few like cover such a wide range of time. So the fact there are some movies before the summer of 27 that just don't get recognized, and Buster Keaton gets kind of roped in there, it's unfortunate, but we're going with technicalities. It just wasn't part of the requirements.
Definitely, yeah.
It didn't meet it.
And I wonder specifically why they cut it off at 27. Whether it was the year that they kind of had the inception of the Academy and said, we started it now, we should start the film, collections from this point on. Why not go back to the start of all film? Go back to the start of the first motion picture, essentially. It's interesting.
Yeah, they could have backtracked, and we'd be looking back on that history now differently, but in a way, like, it's just pre-AMPAS and now post-AMPAS, post-creation of AMPAS that was just the reason why. And again, like, it's unfortunate, but them's the rules, that is what it is. So it's just like another interesting fact, and so sad that it was snubbed.
Buster Keaton's a legend.
Yeah, no, I mean, all these people are legends within the world of the industry. I mean, we're not talking about personally, but like within the world of the industry, they're just legends.
Definitely.
So let's actually get into the discussion of Wings. And I think the best place to start it off is the actual story itself. So first, kind of a quick log line of it. So it's about two young men, one rich, one middle class, who are in love with the same woman, and they become fighter pilots in World War One. So that's just like the basic, log line of it. But to get into more of it, so Wings is about Jack Powell and David Armstrong. They're rivals in the same small American town, and they're both vying for the attention of the pretty Sylvia Lewis. Jack fails to realize that the girl next door, Mary Preston, is desperately in love with him. Jack and David both enlist to become combat pilots in the air service during World War I. As they prepare to leave for training camp, Jack mistakenly believes Sylvia prefers him. She actually prefers David and lets him know about her feelings, but is too kind-hearted to turn down Jack's affection. So Jack and David train together, where they go from being enemies to best friends. There's actually a really important boxing sequence between them as they kind of kick the crap out of each other and then kind of be like, oh, well, we're buddies now. So upon graduating from the Air Force, they were shipped off to France to fight the Germans. And Mary, Jack's neighbor, she also joins the war effort as a driver. And Mary runs into Jack while on leave in Paris, and she finds him to be in this drunken state where he just doesn't recognize her. She puts him to bed, but two military police come in the room as she's changing, and she's forced to resign and return back to the United States. And so from there, the climax of the story is this Battle of St. Mélie. I hope that's how it's pronounced, where David is initially shot down and they think he's dead. But he does survive the crash landing, and he steals a German biplane, and he heads right back for the Allied lines. But by a tragic stroke of bad luck, Jack, he sees this enemy aircraft, and he's just like, I got to avenge my friend. And he begins attacking it, and he brings down the plane, not knowing David was in it. So Jack goes down to kind of check on the wreck and kind of claim like his reward of bringing it down. And when the owner of the land where the aircraft crashed, she tells Jack to come to see the man who's dying, and it's David. So he comes to Jack's dying side, and he agrees and becomes distraught when he realizes that he was the one that had caused this. And David consoles him, saying it's okay. And before he dies, he forgives his comrade. So at the end of the war, Jack comes home to a huge hero's welcome. There's a parade, flowers, and everything. But Jack, the first thing he does after this parade is he visits David's grieving parents to return his effects. And the effect is this small little teddy bear that David carried around the whole time that his mother gave him. So Jack returns that. And so he begs for forgiveness for causing David's death. And David's mother, Mrs. Armstrong, says that it's not Jack who is responsible for his son's death, but the war. Which becomes kind of this like huge significance and kind of the first real time in a movie that's saying like, yeah, war sucks. But at the end, Jack and Mary are reunited, and he realizes he loves her and kisses her after he sees a shooting star. And the shooting star becomes this kind of motif throughout because it's something that he paints on his first car. It's something that he painted on the side of his plane, and he was called the shooting star because of how great of a pilot he was in the Air Force. So yeah, that's just a brief little synopsis of Wings. But definitely go see it. If you haven't seen it yet, you should go see it.
Definitely. I think it holds up.
Yeah, it's a really cool experience, and it's the first huge war film. Not even just to win the Academy Award, just one of the big first war films in general. The film was directed by William Wellman, written by John Monk Sanders and Hope Loring, Louis D. Layton, and the titles were done by Julian Johnson. It was produced by Lucien Hubbard and B.P. Schulberg. The score, which is an incredible score, and we'll get into that, was done by J.S. Zemeckis. The cinematography was Harry Perry, and the film editing was done by E. Lloyd Sheldon. And I wanted to talk about it. It was just like kind of interesting because cinematography, the credit was photographed by, and for film editing, it was just editor-in-chief. So it's just like funny to see those names a little bit different than what we would normally see.
Definitely different than what we're used to.
Yeah, no, completely different. And the cast, so Jack Powell was played by Charles Rogers. David Armstrong was played by Richard Arlen. And Mary Preston was played by Clara Bow. And Clara Bow was kind of the
It star.
The big star. Yeah, she was the big star of Hollywood. And she actually, in a sense, lobbied to have her role bigger than what it actually is in the movie. And yeah, Mary does play a pretty significant role, but the movie is more about the film and the spectacle of the war rather than the love triangle or love square. So, and then there was one person that had like a brief cameo / scene appearance. And that was Gary Cooper. And this was before he became famous for movies like High Noon, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and Mr. D Goes to Town. And this scene, it kind of forms a lot of the tension within the film because Jack and David meet him in this tent. And then he's like, well, I'm going to go fly a plane right now. And then the next minute he's dead. And then, the other, the higher ups within the Air Force, came to get his stuff. And, Jack and David are seeing this and realizing like how they could just die any second. So Gary Cooper had, before he becomes the big film star that he became, has a small role within Wings.
I do agree with you. I think it sets a tone for the rest of the film. Up until that point, it's like happy-go-lucky, right? Like they're almost excited to go to war, right?
Oh yeah, and it almost seems like maybe this is a bit propaganda. Like I felt that it was very propaganda-ish at first with the film because it's like, oh, you got to be American, and then this character Herman Schwimpf, he has a tattoo of the American flag, and he's like flexing his muscles to make it wave, and he's showing how American he is. But then all of a sudden, yeah, this person they just met just dies, and you just see Jack and David kind of be like, oh shit, we're in war. And it almost they become hardened a little bit by it. They still keep some of that happy-go-luckiness throughout the film.
Definitely.
And I think that's just a natural thing in some silent films. But yeah, it is a very formative moment for just to kind of be like, well, this is a war film. This isn't just a happy, smiley, fun, movie just to watch.
Yeah, I think it cements the tone, suggesting like people can die. Like your main characters can die. And I think it cements it even more knowing that Gary Cooper goes on to be like such a legendary actor that he is. It just cements that life is fragile, especially when it comes to war, and it's not just about hanging out with your bros. Up until that point, that's really what the film is, just them fighting and then becoming closer together until they're truly best friends.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. So yeah, so it's a nice, I wouldn't say it's a nice moment, but it's a good moment for the story of the film. Exactly. Yeah, so let's get into some of the things that we liked about it. So I figured let's start out with just scenes, and let's kind of go back and forth. So the one scene, and I think this is probably the most well-known scene, is the Paris nightclub part of the film where
definitely
Jack is essentially just getting shit-faced. And
so drunk. Oh, so drunk that he sees bubbles.
Yes, and I want to talk about the bubble. Like this goes into like many parts of like my favorite things because the whole scene is great because to kind of set it up a little bit. So Jack is in this nightclub. He's getting drunk with a lot of his army buddies. The army's actually calling everyone back for this like one last big battle. And Mary is also in Paris, and she hears about the shooting star pilot being there. She realizes that's Jack, and then she sees him in this nightclub. She gets dressed up, tries to get him to notice her, but he doesn't notice her. And so it's this like back and forth kind of like, sequence and scenes where just so much happens, and it's a backdrop with just the craziness of Paris at night. And so the scene, and then kind of connected to one of my favorite shots, and probably the most well-known shot of Wings, is I'm going to call it a zipline shot, where it goes over a bunch of tables in the nightclub, and at one table there's a couple kissing, and one table there's actually it's actually a female couple.
Wow, I didn't even notice that. Wow.
Yeah. So it
no
has
idea.
that, and it's also famous for Jack and David. They say they kiss when David dies, but Jack kind of just kisses him on the cheek. So I wouldn't call that a kiss, but
oh wow, okay.
Yeah. So like Wings was like known for that. So that scene. And it's also pre-code era, these movies. So like they were just showing that everyone's getting shit faced and drinking and doing all these like I guess what wasn't at the time socially acceptable things. So it kind of is tracking shot over the tables until finally it just lands right on Jack as he's filling up his champagne flute, and he's just like so just like wide-eyed and like glassy, and it's just so funny just to watch. But it's just really well done and well crafted, because it's not easy to get that shot done. Like there's a lot of coordination that you need to pull that off.
Definitely, yeah. There's so much going on in the scene and the backgrounds and everything. But I got to be honest, this is where the film kind of drops off for me, and it becomes like my least favorite part of the entire movie, honestly.
Really?
While I found it fun and engaging, especially like the cinematography as we were talking about, I just felt that the bubbles and how goofy it became felt so like beyond the sense of humor that we experienced so far in the film.
Yeah.
Like, I understand they're celebrating and this is supposed to be their big celebration, but the fact that he's so drunk and he's seeing bubbles, like he's hallucinating, like it's so ridiculous and like insane. It's just, took me out of the film so much. And then we get into like the conversation of Mary as a character. Like she's so just pointless. She literally is there to like find and engage in love. And her literally only purpose in the film is just like find a lover, find someone to like fall in love with, and like constantly chase after these two men. Yeah. Right before this scene, we see her literally break the fourth wall. She stares directly into the camera. So to set the scene, before she goes and finds out that Jack's there, she is a part of the motor corps. Is that what they call her?
That sounds right.
She's a part of a group of men and women that were sent there not to fight in war, but essentially to be transports and help move equipment and move men. So she is there to essentially find Jack and convince him that she's in love with him. But there's a moment where she kind of like falls into like a little puddle of water, and like she looks directly into the camera and kind of like, turns her head and shrugs a little bit like, oh, well, like that just happened. And that alone was so bizarre, because it's the only time in the entire movie where we get like a fourth wall breaking. It's very, very bizarre. And then she leads into the nightclub scene where she finds Jack. And then I have so many other like grievances with that scene in general too.
Go ahead. Let's hear them.
So so she gets there.
Right.
Jack is really drunk, but also David's really drunk. And when she looked there? Yeah, so when the scene first starts, they're both there and they're drinking together. David has a girl, and he has this other girl that's there in the room in the entire nightclub scene, and he's drinking with her, and he's like happy, having a fun time, and he essentially walks away with her, like at least alluding to that they're going to go have sex, or they're going to go do whatever this couple is going to do. And Mary looks at David and she's like almost disappointed. She like sees him walk away and she's like, oh darn, like I could have chosen him, but he walked away with another woman. Oh well, like on to Jack. Like again, it's just pointing to her character only being there to simply say, I need a man. This man, oh no, he's taken. Okay, this man then, like, I'm gonna go with you. And then that's when she interacts with Jack, and he's so unbelievably fucked up that he's seeing bubbles, and it was like so distracting, and I just was so annoyed by the entire scene. And I can keep going even more because it gets even worse from Mary's point of view, and how they represent women in this film in general.
Yeah, I think that's another big thing, is just like the treatment of women in this film. And it again, like, yeah, even though Clara Bow, who plays Mary, is kind of the bigger star, she is very simplified within this film. But it's interesting that you saw that she was disappointed that she couldn't have David, because I've seen this movie twice now, and I've only ever seen it as that she just wants Jack, that she never is disappointed that she can't have David. So it's interesting that
odd, yeah.
that's what you took from it, and I think that's a very important thing about silent films in general, is that there's so much more room for interpretation, just because there's no sound, there's no dialogue, there's only title cards, and there are very few title cards, and the title cards that are in this scene are like these really funny ones. And that's one of my favorite lines is so Jack is kind of walking away with this one French woman, and Mary's trying to pull Jack to her, and so Jack's kind of like trying to just figure out which one he wants to go with, and he shakes them both and bubbles come out of them. And he looks at Mary and he goes, she has bubbles even in her eyes, she wins. And I was like, again, like, and I'm not saying, and I'm not saying that this scene and the sequence is like, oh, the best thing I've ever seen. I just thought it was like something very memorable from the movie, just because it's so totally different, and it doesn't necessarily progress the main story of the war and Jack and David, but it just like it adds to the secondary storyline of this like love triangle, or just this like love story, which is part of the drama of the movie.
Definitely a drama between the two men. I definitely initially. Before we move off the scene, I will talk about my favorite line from the film, because it ties directly into Clara Bow's character Mary, and her basically trying to seduce Jack. So she initially tries to get his attention, but he's so drunk, he's just seeing bubbles, yada yada yada. She then is like, oh well, I need another plan, like I need another way to grab him. So she goes into this bathroom kind of thing inside of this Paris nightclub. And the washroom says, what's the matter? You lost your man? Tell me about it, Cherry. Mary goes, he's just a boy. He doesn't realize. The washwoman says, if you would catch the fly, do you set the vinegar? No, my Cherry, but the sugar, yes. So put on one of the dancer's dresses. So she's essentially saying you wouldn't catch a man if you were dressed as vinegar. So not only is she saying if you're not dressed hot enough to attract a man, you must dress a little more sexy, or refer to it as sugar to really attract a man.
Yeah.
And then once she does that, then Jack is like, she's got bubbles in her eyes.
Oh, the bubbles. Yeah,
it's another time. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is uncomfortable, and you're definitely very like, when you're watching, you're like, kind of like cringing from it. But for me, when I like watch these films, I wouldn't say like I was in the mindset of a 1927. I was just like, maybe something just to think about.
So speaking of Mary and this kind of love triangle in general, besides the epic war scenes, which we'll get into, do you think this kind of love triangle is a bit cliche or like cookie cutter?
Yeah, I absolutely think so, and I think it's actually reinforced because Sylvia, who like Jack and David are both vying for, she doesn't appear after they leave. Like they go off to war and they say goodbye to her.
She's gone,
and she's just gone. And you would think
she's just never in the film.
Yeah,
yet.
You would think there would be a scene where Jack comes back after David's dead, and he says I'm sorry to Sylvia.
Sorry. Yeah,
and but I guess also he finds out that she didn't actually love him based off of a thing that she found. That he found in David's like
the locket.
Yeah, the locket. I cannot remember that name. But yeah, I mean it's very typical. It's very Hollywood cookie cutter type of love triangle stuff. But There is one cool shot though at the beginning that like is kind of a part of this, and I think it's actually my favorite shot of the whole film. And it's of so David and Sylvia are sitting like this swing set. It's like hanging from a tree, and it's kind of like I want to.
The camera's attached.
Yeah,
to it.
it's like it's almost like a hammock that they're laying on. The camera's on it, so the camera is moving with the swing, and it's like going up and down, and so the background is constantly changing, but the foreground is the same. And they're both David and Sylvia are kind of lovingly looking at each other, and I think Sylvia's playing a guitar. I think she's playing an instrument, from what I remember.
Mandolin or something.
And as they keep going back up, you see the background, and you see Jack coming forward closer and closer with his car, the OG shooting star in the film. And I just thought it was like a really cool shot because there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot, there's movement, there's things appearing, getting closer and closer. So I thought it was like a very well crafted shot. And I guess I'm not a cinematographer, but even when I try to think of like how I would do something or how I would shoot something, like movement is such like that is a master, like a master thing that you have to master, that like understanding movement and the camera. So the fact that was included, I thought was like really, really cool and well done.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome introduction shot to like those two characters and sets the scene of these kind of like two lovebirds.
It's really cool. And while looking at the film now, almost 100 years later, it feels so cliche, but it feels like this film not only defined war cliches and war films, but also just kind of set the standard for what love triangle is, and really what love triangle can be on film. And then from there, other films have done it better, and they don't have that sexist element to it, and the women are actually characters, and they say and do more than just be there looking for a dude.
Yeah, the film, it definitely seems very like what you would see today in just any kind of love triangle. And I don't think this is the first movie to do that. I'm sure there's some. I'm sure like Shakespeare, there's definitely some love triangle that we're both forgetting that is huge. But so that's something unique,
particularly in film.
Yeah, but particularly in film and the backdrop of war, it's the Wings is very Hollywood typical, and I think that's something to remember for the win that it got for outstanding picture. It's a Hollywood movie. And that's something that needs to be remembered about Wings. So like a lot of these cliches that we're kind of talking about and things that seem very basic are just a standard sometimes.
What I found the most exciting was by far the action scenes.
That's
the scenes of the fighters in the cockpit. It not only is it so mind-blowing 100 years later, but to imagine that this was done that long ago with huge 35 millimeter film rolls on top of these cameras, like strapped down, as the real actors were learning how to fly, learning how to navigate these ships, all while actually shooting these huge wide shots of like all these planes flying and composing these like beautiful symmetrical lines in midair. I was blown away by the action scenes in this movie.
Yeah, I was too. Because I remember my first time watching it, I didn't know what the movie was about, and so all of a sudden when they have these like humongous aerial shots, and I'm like, how the hell did they do that? Like, and if you've ever seen like some of these like cinema cameras they had back then, they are huge. They are absolutely huge, and the fact that they were able to rig it and get the shots, and the shots are really well done with. Like probably no like beside like they had the viewfinder in the camera and like that's it. So the fact they got that it was pretty incredible. And again, it's some of my favorite stuff too. And it's pretty significant like what they were able to accomplish, which again goes into the effects aspect and again like the huge production Hollywood aspect of the film and why it won.
Yeah, definitely. It's so big in scope when it comes to like the war scenes. And I was watching this film with my roommates and my one roommate where we were watching this introduction where they're building up the army. They're showing these two men train, and they get to a scene where like all the men are on gunners and they're looking down a range. And at the end of the range, their targets are these planes that are on strings.
Yeah.
And as soon as we saw that, my roommate goes, oh, he thought that the entire film and the war scenes were going to be like
little planes on strings flying around because he didn't understand. Like, and then as soon as we got to the actual Worf scenes, he's like, "Wow, like this is crazy. This is not what I expected from 1927. This is wild."
Yeah, I thought I kind of had that feeling too. I was like, oh, how are they going to do that? And even when watching the movie, I was like, that's probably how they did it. They used like little miniatures, but then
mini planes.
But then researching it, you're like, oh no, they actually did put cameras on these planes and essentially set a standard almost for any aerial shot for any film to come out. Like this is the first, and they look exactly like what you would imagine today.
Yeah, and it immediately strikes me into modern films, like most recently like Dunkirk and the Mission Impossible franchise, like the way that real actors doing real stunts is defined as exciting, and knowing that aspect and seeing it live on film will always beat a LED background or a green screen or a blue set. Like all of it's just more engaging and it feels grounded and real. And you can't watch Dunkirk or these Mission Impossible films without just seeing Wings inspired, these directors so much.
Yeah. No, I agree, and again, like there's a reason why this movie won, and I think this has to do with it mostly is the action was just like this is it, like that's the biggest spectacle they had, and I think even doing some research, we discovered that for in theaters that they would actually have a third projector and open it up, basically make it a widescreen aspect ratio for the theaters, right?
Exactly, yeah. So the film would open up specifically from about like 15 feet to 20 feet when you're seeing it in theaters, only when we would get into the cockpit kind of sense. So knowing that in mind too, that takes me back to Nolan's obsession with IMAX films and having a bigger picture. Yeah. He filmed all of Dunkirk on IMAX. Like knowing all these aspects of Wings, I look at the film Dunkirk and I'm like, this is like almost a remake of Wings essentially. And it takes place at a different time of history, and it's about Dunkirk and World War II in general. Or is that World War I?
No, that one's World War II.
World War II. It's just so reminiscent. It's almost like he was so inspired by Wings that he wanted to make the iconic British war film of Wings.
Yeah.
Very, very, very cool.
Yeah, no, I loved it, and and Wings, for a silent movie, it runs 2.5 hours. But if you're only just watching the action sequences and the war sequences, like it's really like worth it just to see that.
It goes quick, honestly. Yeah. Even at 2.5 hours, like there are some slow down points. Like the pair scene, while cool, is a little slow. The setup for the characters is a little bit slow and clunky to get through. But once you get to those climactic acting scenes and it's building up with that amazing score by J.S. Zepnik, is what I'm gonna say. Yeah. Fantastic, and supposedly, it's something that we need to mention is that. Obviously, we'll never be able to experience the film in 1927 when they would take it around and bring it to new cities and set up the sound system. One of the first films to actually set up their own sound system for each individual showing of the screening. What we got is a $700,000 restoration from Paramount Pictures during their 100th anniversary. So we are watching a film that's been restored directly from the composer's notes via the soundtrack, as well as adding in slightly more special effects when it comes to like the audio from the shooting and the air fights, as well as when the planes are shot down. I thought it was so cool that they kind of like explode into fire as they're spinning and crashing down.
Yeah, and they even added some color to the flames as the planes were coming down, and that was wasn't that part of the restoration?
It was part of the restoration, but it was following the guidelines of what it was like to watch this film. Yeah. So the film was technically lost at a point in time. And I think in the 50s, they found a particular print. And that print was like kind of like the framework of what it was. But then from there, they kind of took examples and recordings of what this film was back in the day to kind of recreate what it was, seeing it there live in a theater.
Yeah, and putting the music and the special effects sounds, which again like is interesting because of how the jazz singer wasn't like talkies weren't part of the ceremony. But anyways, so it's interesting how important the sound was and how the part of the restoration was to include that into it. And then it also you think, well, am I actually watching the actual Wings? And I didn't. again, like I didn't necessarily know like how much of it was restored and kind of pieced together until after watching it. And I definitely want to ask, like, does that impact what you saw? Does that impact essentially this podcast? Because are we just watching restorations? Like, we're never going to see the real thing if like things happen to it. And so does that like really impact to our whole idea of this and just, the thesis in general?
Well, in a way, yes, certainly. I mean, we'll never be able to like be there in person experiencing that original show, and that's what they based these awards off of. So in a way, yeah, it will always be, but this is what we have. This is the fragility of just film as a physical medium, and it just being not only flammable but decays over time. Like, we have so many lost films throughout the years that we are lucky that we have this restoration, and they seem so intent on restoring it to the original film that Wellman envisioned. And I think that it's as close as we could possibly ever get. There may be adjustments to make it better that wouldn't have seen in 1927, but this is what we got, and I think this is the way we have to compare the films to each other. I think most of these early films are going to be changed and not be exactly what they were when people saw them, but it's what we have in our time to view these films as.
Yeah, I'm like sort of in between. I'm mostly okay that I was watching a restoration of it because just acknowledging the fact, like, yeah, I wasn't there to see the original, and you weren't going to get that original experience, and it is disappointing to kind of to recognize that this has been altered in a way, like almost like what George Lucas did with Star Wars. A totally different discussion about that, but for me, it's still the movie. Like, as long as none of the story is changed, and I don't think any of the story got changed in this restoration, I'm mostly okay with it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's any major huge changes or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, and this kind of goes more into when we get into Sunrise, is like, if it were an artistic decision, is so much more significant than just we put the music that would have originally accompanied it anyways. So from like understanding and doing the research we have on the restoration, it doesn't seem like any of the artistic integrity was taken out of it, although some would say it was, just because of it's a silent film. But I wouldn't say that. I don't think any artistic integration was taken away. But it definitely does sit in the back of your head, like, well, this wasn't the original thing.
Yeah, definitely not at all. So we keep talking about the scale and how epic this film really is.
Yeah.
I think it really shows in the numbers. So looking at the budget for the film, supposedly the budget was only $2 million.
Only $2 million.
But only $2 million, yes. Only $2 million at the time. Well, the budget was only $2 million, but they were assisted with $16 million from the U.S. government and the United States military, which takes the total budget to $18 million. But if you were to include that amount.
Was that $16 million actually spent, or was it just like, well, we have $16 million worth of planes and troops?
That's what it was. I mean, $16 million, it would be all considered in your production and your budget, right? Like, whether you're just considering them as props, that's still accounted to your budget. So if you were to take that amount, which is $18 million, and equate it to 2020 terms, that's $266 million. Woo. So you kind of get like a better understanding of how big and how just massive this film is. Just when you see this like final climactic scene, there's 3,500 soldiers and dozens of planes flying, and it's unreal. It totally blew me away. Still, I've still not seen war films. I've seen big war films that are close to this, but this still just blew me away.
I think it definitely does blow me away. I think though it does get better, and there's one movie in the next few years that does win Best Picture that you'll watch and you'll be like, wow, that was an even better war sequence. But yeah, for the time, this was extremely significant, and especially for that budget. A movie that today gets made for $250 million. What the Avengers Endgame was made for that, I think. I think the Hobbit trilogy was made for almost around the same. But I mean, again, it's completely different time. So, but the numbers are pretty staggering.
Yeah,
especially when we say like $2
insane.
million for this budget just to make this movie. Like $2 million today would, for an indie film, like I don't even know if that's even enough at times.
No, it probably wouldn't be.
But it's just we keep on saying it. Yeah, it's just a reflection of the times and just how things were different. So before we like, I guess, give off our exact feelings on Wings, we have to talk about Sunrise, right?
Yeah, definitely. Sunrise, an allegory tale about a man fighting the good and evil within him. Both sides are made flesh. One a sophisticated woman he is attracted to, and the other his wife. A vacationing woman from the city lingers in a lakeside town for weeks. After dark, she goes to a farmhouse where a man and the wife live with their child. She whistles from the fence outside. The man is torn, but finally departs, leaving his wife with the memories of better times when they were deeply in love. The man and woman meet in the moonlight and kiss passionately. She wants him to sell his farm, which has not done well recently, to join her in the city. When she suggests that he solve the problem of his wife by drowning her, he throttles her violently, but even that dissolves into a passionate embrace. The woman gathers bundles of reeds so that when the boat is overturned, the man can stay afloat. The wife suspects nothing when her husband suggests going on an outing. When they set off across the lake, she soon grows suspicious. He prepares to throw her overboard, but when she pleads for mercy, he realizes he cannot do it. He rows frantically for shore, and when the boat reaches land, the wife flees. She boards a trolley and he follows, begging her not to be afraid of him. The trolley brings them to the city. Her fear and disappointment are overwhelming. He piles her with flowers and cakes until she finally stops crying and accepts the gifts. Emerging back on the street, they are touched to see a bride entering a church, and they follow her inside to watch the wedding. The man breaks down and asks her to forgive him. After a tearful reconciliation, they continue their adventure in the city, having their photograph taken together and visiting a fun fair. As darkness falls, they board the trolley for home. Soon they are drifting back across the lake under the moonlight. A sudden storm causes their boat to begin sinking. The man remembers the 2 bundles of reeds he placed in the boat earlier and ties the bundles around the wife. The boat capsizes and the man awakes on a rocky shore. He gathers the townspeople to search the lake, but all they find is broken bundles of reeds floating in the water. Convinced the wife has drowned, the grief-stricken man stumbles home. The wife from the city goes to his house, assuming their plan has succeeded. The man begins to choke her. Then the maid calls out to him that his wife is still alive. So he releases the woman and runs to the wife who survived by clinging to one of the last bundles of reeds. The man kneels by his wife's bed as she slowly opens her eyes. The man and the wife kiss, while the woman from the city carriage rolls down the hill towards the lake. The film dissolves to the sunrise. Sunrise was directed by F.W. Murnau. Writing credits to Carl Mayer, Herman Suderman for the original theme, Catherine Hilkler for titles, and H.H. Caldwell for titles. Produced by William Fox. Music by R.H. Bassett, Carly Eleanor, Erno Rapi, Hugo Resfield, and Willie Shermitt Gentier. Cinematography by Charles Rochner and Carl Struess, and film editing by Harold D. Schuster. The man is played by George O'Brien, the wife is played by Janet Gaynor, and the woman from the city is played by Margaret Livingston. Ben, do you have a favorite part or favorite scene from Sunrise?
Yeah, I think my favorite part or scene from the film is actually the wedding scene. I think this is kind of, if we're looking at the film as a roller coaster, this is the tippy top. This is where I think it all gets better for the man and his wife. So we're ramping up, and even though he has his like realization and change within the boat before he tries to kill her, it still keeps ramping up because she's scared of him and he's chasing after her. But then he like truly realizes, he almost has this like God like realization, like it almost seems like the light just beams right on him in the church, where he's like, he loves her. He realizes how much he loves his wife. So for me, like, that was probably the most emotional and the most character changing part of it, because then right after that, the film changes into this adventure, this day adventure for the man and his wife, and they are almost like kids again. And that goes back to one of my favorite lines from the film, which is said by the maid at the beginning. She goes, "They used to be like children, carefree, always happy and laughing." And that's what happens after he begs her for forgiveness and at the wedding inside the church. Is they become happy and they laugh, and they become their old selves again.
Yeah, there's truly an emotional core to this film that struck me a lot more than Wings. And that's not to say that they weren't aiming for any kind of particular theme or emotion in Wings. Sunrise just seems to be taking these like allegory of really just a human relationship, and just kind of breaking it down and showing the weaknesses that each human has when in a relationship. They have faults, and sometimes those faults are like shown brightly, and they show it so brightly that he's willing to murder his wife, which is insane. But I think when you're looking at this particular time, you have to be so exaggerated, especially coming from a director who's so just dug in and experienced in German Expressionism, that this was his first American film and his first Hollywood film that it shows throughout. He's drawing up these emotions through these direct performances, and I was more engaged in this film emotionally than Wings, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was too, and kind of comparing this love triangle to Wings, this love triangle is way more depth than Wings. It has so much more drama in it. It's not the same cookie cutter Hollywood love triangle. This is the man is being told to kill his wife. It's so different. it's literally so different. And I think that's what makes this film appealing, is that it takes chances. It takes risks. The Murnau, like, he goes into this coming from this background of German Expressionism and that side of the film industry and that film technique, and he takes risks in this movie, and I think it pays off really well. And when looking at like the technical aspects of this film won for not just the unique and artistic picture, it won for Janet Gaynor's performance as the wife, and it won for cinematography. Wings didn't win for cinematography; it wasn't even nominated. And I think that's an interesting comparison between the two, because we just spent all this time talking about Wings and how crazy the production was of it and all these aerial shots and the war sequences, but yet the cinematography for Sunrise, in my opinion, is better. It's well crafted.
Yeah.
It's well crafted, and it uses the medium of filmmaking to do a lot more, rather than just being like, well, here are planes in the sky, like we're able to like create this like cool effect. Like it does more, and that's not taking away from Wings. It's just a different thing, and we're going to get into that, but it is one of the big differences between these movies, and it's significant that it was recognized for its cinematography.
Yeah, I think both films have a sort of spectacle. They're just very different spectacle, and I think that German Expressionism really shines through not only their performance, but these like grandiose sets. And when we talk about Wings, we were talking about the nightclub scene as they kind of like fly as if like a god flies over showing this party, but we see so much of that throughout Sunrise as well. These big beautiful sets when they go to the fair or circus.
Oh, that
you
shot's
see these
awesome.
like, yeah, I love that scene of the entire circus and fair, as like we see these sets move in the background, and these roller coasters are like in the environment with the characters in the foreground. They're using these weird kind of like images to represent all these different set pieces. I found it so engaging and so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it kind of leads us into discussion of the outstanding picture versus unique and artistic picture. Because again, like, both of these films have their merits, but then as we start to look at, well, which one's the best picture, I don't know. I like them both, but I think I have to say Sunrise is the better movie.
Yeah, it really depends on, as a viewer, what you're interested in, I think, in a film. Like what you're looking for in a film. Are you looking to be entertained, or are you looking to question yourself, question your morals, question characters, and just overall think more about like a film after you watch it. You know, when I finished Wings, I thought about, wow, that was cool. Like that was cool, all those action set pieces. I did not once think, wow, Jack was cool. He's a great, interesting, in-depth character.
Yeah,
David was an in-depth, interesting character.
I didn't either, and I think what makes Sunrise appealing, and I say this a lot about some of my favorite movies, is they're almost about the fringe aspects of society. Like no, like this is about a man who's having an affair and he tries to kill his wife. Like that's not normal. And I think that's what makes Sunrise so appealing is that
bold as all hell too.
Exactly. It took risks, and it's not the risks of special effects, it's the risk of a story. It's the risk that this is going to be different. It's going to break your expectation of love. It's going to break your expectation of your duty to your partner, and it's going to break the expectation of whether you agree or disagree about them coming back together.
Yeah, definitely. To me, it just led to so many more questions. You know, usually when I have questions after a film, it could be one or two things. You know, either I have questions because I was so engaged by it, I want to know more about the world, and that could be a good thing. But the other way could be that I have so many questions because that film did not give me enough of that world, did not give me enough of those characters to like understand what it was trying to go for. But it was the prior for me here. I like had so many questions whether the woman in the city even existed. Like to me, it was like, personally, when I viewed this film, I didn't really see her as an actual character. Like she was like an almost temptation, like an internal temptation that this man had to leave his wife. And I think it's something that every person experiences in a relationship, whether their partner is right for them, whether their partner has everything that they think they need in a significant other. And I found that so engaging on just an emotional standpoint. Do you think the woman in the city is an actual real existing person?
I don't know. I think she does exist, and it is, but there are a lot of signs to maybe she doesn't. The only person there are three people she interacts with, and that's the man, and then and the people that she's living with. I don't know if they're her parents or relatives, but she only interacts with very few people, and she's not really seen by anyone else. So yeah, maybe she doesn't exist. Maybe she is a form of temptation. And I think that's what's so great about films in general is there are a lot of interpretations. So I could totally buy that she's just a figment of the man's imagination. And I can also buy that she's an actual character, is an actual person.
Yeah, it could go either way, right?
Yeah, no, it can. And so it adds like that layer of the story. It just adds so much more, where again with Wings it's just plateau with its story. It's very basic, whereas with Sunrise it goes up and down. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, definitely. It just draws more out of the viewer, and it asks more from the viewer in general, which personally I find that way more engaging in films in general.
Yeah.
I want to reference a little bit more about the title of Sunrise and why you might think it's called Sunrise. But before I do, I want to read the first title card in this film. The song of the man and his wife is of no place in every place. You might hear it anywhere, at any time. For wherever the sun rises and sets, in the city's turmoil or under the open sky on the farm, life is much the same, sometimes bitter, sometimes sweet. And I'm curious, Ben, what you think that first title card means and why it's used as the initial kind of signifier for Sunrise as a piece of art.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite lines of the whole film, and I think that it goes beyond just love and how love is in different places and shown in different ways. I think it has to do with just humans and the human connection and just the human experience. It's going to be completely different and unique wherever the sun rises, wherever the sun sets. It's bitter, it's sweet. It takes place in the city or it takes place in complete open sky. Like life is just so unique to everyone else's experience, but there's still some similarities between them between everyone else's relationships. And I think that's what Sunrise Snapshots is like. This is a snapshot of one relationship under the sun.
One day.
Yeah, one day.
Literally one day.
Yeah, it's just one thing. And I think that's what the overall, that opening title is. It's everything happens under the sun. This is what but it happens in its own ways. And again, it's emotionally profound, way more than just especially what Wings does, which Wings, its biggest emotion, the profoundness of it is just war is bad.
Spectacle, and that's about the theme that we get from the film.
Yeah,
so always have a person by your side, and war is a dangerous thing.
Exactly. So so getting into now how we compare these two, I mean, so we have Wings, which is very, from the technical aspect of it is that it's huge. Its engineering effects are incredible. But with Sunrise, it has all these artistic effects. And one of the shots that I'm going to reference is at the beginning, the man is looking at his wife in the house. And this is when he's going to kill her. And it's when he's planning he's feeling this, it's like this ghosting of the woman from the city kind of caressing him and like holding his head and rubbing his shoulders. And I was like, how the hell did you pull that off? How the hell did you pull that off with basic film editing? I mean, even today in digital editing, that's not an easy thing to just put together. That takes a lot of effort.
It looks better than a lot of CGI that you see of kind of ghosts doing that. Yeah, there's so many moments in this film where I'm like, damn, that is so cool. Like, how the hell do they even do that? Like, being in film school, I'm like, struggle to even sort of compose shots, and let alone, have all these insane, almost pre-green screen, well, definitely pre-green screen like effects, the way they take these sets and they like layer them on top of each other. And I'm assuming the way they kind of like created that ghost effect is simply laying these two scenes together on top of each other, and the way they kind of like match up perfectly as this ghostly figure. And I think that comes back again to whether that woman in the city really exists or not, whether it's like all in the man's head. Is this something that every person goes through in a relationship?
Yeah. I definitely agree. You could point to that. And even talk about green screen effects. There's one shot in particular that almost seems like it was green screen. So it was of the man and the wife walking through the city street with like all these cars passing by.
Definitely.
And I couldn't tell, was it blue screen or green screen, or was it that the editors literally cut out a sequence of them walking and did it frame by frame, which that's an immense thing to take on and pull off. And it's really well done.
Yeah, so well done. I think it's similar into the Wings, where we see the fire on the planes and some of the special effects used in there. It's like layering individual frames on top of each other, and then slowly frame by frame kind of moving those, almost creating animation within a live action format.
Just like the bubbles.
It
is. So
we gotta love them bubbles.
Yeah, so I love Sunrise. It sounds like you love Sunrise. And it's not like Sunrise doesn't have its I'm going to say its negative aspects, some of its cons, because it's a little misogynistic. The male character is just the man, and the female lead is the wife. She's not even the woman; she's the wife. and then the woman from the city is a woman who is a homewrecker. She's the woman from the city. Like it adds the stereotype of these molds that women have to fit, and so it's not like this movie gets any break from some of these awful aspects of it. Like, it still has that.
Yeah, that's definitely similar in Wings, the way they kind of like subject women as just kind of like lust objects. Men are kind of blindly dumb in this film, but I think the way it works in this film is much, much stronger than Wings, because it's tied to the theme and it's tied to the drama of the situation. And when I watch the film, I really do think the woman in the city is just an internal fantasy from the guy. So from that point of view, it's like the man picturing it himself, which, yes, is misogynistic in its own right, but I think that aspect of the film plays into the theme, so it makes sense to me. What I wish is we got a little more from the wife. We get a little more of who she is as a character, because I feel like we get more time with the man to kind of set up that dynamic of of either he goes with the woman in the city or he goes with his wife. But yeah, the women are definitely underrepresented in both films.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a similarity.
Absolutely. So those are kind of our general feelings, about both films. But, we kind of now have to compare the two and discuss how does Outstanding Picture compare to unique and artistic picture, and then how they have now formed our views for what should be a Best Picture winner today.
And are they worthy of the titles?
Yes, are they worthy of those titles? Hitting it right on the head.
So just take a moment here and acknowledge what the Academy thinks is worthy. And the reason for the Academy to promote and push these films is very particular. So Louis B. Mayer's purpose in creating the award was to unite the 5 branches of the film industry, including actors, directors, producers, technicians, and writers. Mayer commented on the creation of the awards. I found that the best way to handle filmmakers was to hang medals all over them. If I got them cups and awards, they'd kill them to produce what I wanted. That's why the Academy Award was created. Yeah. The Academy Award began as a way to promote the new film industry, then seeking to displace staged vaudeville as the predominant form of satirical entertainment in the United States. So I think we get a clear, direct, pinpoint answer of why these awards were created. Obviously, that's changed over time, but what do you think of that, Ben?
It's a little skeevy, and there are other aspects to also why the Academy was made to kind of handle some unions and to kind of put the big Hollywood foot down on people who are kind of be like, well, this isn't right how we're doing something. So it's a little fishy with like why the Academy was made and like what they then deem worthy to win. But there needs to be some competition with these filmmakers. They need to have an incentive to be like, well, I need to put more artistic integrity into it. Otherwise, we're going to just get like, I could just make a film just using my phone and make the same story as like Sunrise, but it's not going to have the same technical and artistic levels as Murnau, who put so much into it and what came out of it and why it ultimately won and why it's so revered today. It's such a nuance. There's so many nuances to it. It doesn't just happen in a vacuum.
Yes. It's so nuanced. And his quote, Louis B. Mayer's quote is just, it's so aggressive. It's so producer-like, and it's something that obviously is adapted over time, and the Academy would never say anything like this ever again.
Oh yeah, would never.
But it's hard to say what is worthy or not without having the context of every film. It's hard to say, well, this film is definitely the Best Picture winner because I haven't seen every film from 1927 to 1928. I don't really know if there's a better film out there. And, that takes time as like a viewer and someone who just wants to be a cinephile or considers themselves a cinephile. It takes time to understand that. And I think the worthy question is something that's always ongoing.
Yeah.
Do I think these films are spectacular in their own right and in their own way? Certainly.
Yes, I completely agree. And to put some numbers to the facts, I have been keeping track of critics' ratings and my own personal ratings. So just to throw some numbers out there. So Rotten Tomatoes, so this is for Wings. The Rotten Tomatoes percentage is at 93%. So that means that 93% of reviews is a fresh rating. The average critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is a 7.53. The audience score percentage is a 78. So 78% of audiences who watch it like it. And then their average rating score, which is out of 5, is 3.88. And IMDb gives Wings a 7.5. Now, for Sunrise, the percentage that critics loved it or gave it a fresh rating is a 98%. And the average rating is an 8.99 out of 10. The audience score is a 92%. And it has an audience average rating score of 4.43. And these are also based off of different numbers of ratings. Like with Wings, the audiences who gave a review is 3,500, and then for Sunrise is 9,600. And IMDb for Sunrise is an 8.1. my personal rating for Wings, and I know me and you had a discussion before, when we were talking about the creation of the podcast about rating it. And my scale is out of 100, and I give Wings an 80, and I would give Sunrise a 90.
Very much a like a grade point scale, right?
Yeah,
and for me, it became very hard to really dial down to that specific of a rating. The best I could try to do is even it out on a 10-point scale. So I'll still measure from to 100, but it'll be in 10 decimals essentially. Yeah. So I would give both Wings and Sunrise an 80 flat, I believe.
Okay. I'm going to mark that on my spreadsheet.
In a way, it's just they both offer so much in different ways that I completely understand why you would put Sunrise over, as we discussed, like the emotional significance and how much the story affected. And I totally agree with all those points. I totally agree that Sunrise has more prominence when it comes to the storytelling. But on the other hand, Wings is just so significant when it comes to the way action is filmed, the way they set up this like love triangle. Even though it's trite and misogynistic, it's doing so much. It's doing so much with a 2.5-hour film that still kind of breezed by for me, which I thought was impressive.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's the fact that our baselines are at an 80. I think shows like what a Best Picture winner should be, and what does make it worthy. Because you need to have a lot. You need to have a lot going for you, but I think more importantly, it needs to, at the end of the day, when you are thinking about, well, how would I grade this? How would I rate it? It needs to be more than above average. It needs to be something really good to make you feel like that it's worthy. And even though they are two totally different categories, and even though Wings is technically the first Best Picture winner, they're both worthy, in my view, of winning those awards. And I think if Sunrise, if you want to put it against any other year, I think could still win.
Definitely.
And so when we're talking about the thesis of this podcast, when we're talking about what is worthy and what's Oscar worthy, both of these are Oscar worthy. Both of these movies meet the criteria for me to say officially on this platform, Wings is worthy and Sunrise is worthy of the Best Picture awards.
Certainly. I think when I look at the two, it's funny because before even going into this, Sunrise is a film that's talked about a lot more, at least personally in film school and in the film, like friends and family that love film. Like I hear way more conversation about Sunrise than I do Wings, which is funny because the Best Picture winner is considered Wings, not Sunrise.
Yeah, Wings is definitely referenced more as the silent film masterpiece. And again, like my knowledge of silent films is not extensive, but it was really good. And there are a lot of movies, especially Best Picture winners, to follow that don't live up to the standard that Sunrise set. And yeah, I think that's important to recognize.
I think it's important to say, like, we're not critics. Our reviews are just purely based on how we feel at this specific moment. If I were to go back and watch 5 other films from 1927 to 28, maybe my perspective on Wings is like lessened. Maybe I see a film that's came out before Wings and I understand that, like, oh wow, they borrowed a lot of techniques even from 1922. Or same with Sunrise. Like, these change and maybe my reviews will change. Maybe I might think one is better than the other in the future. I think by the time we get to the very end of all of these Academy Awards, or even 10 years, we could look back and really discuss if our views have changed on the films.
Yeah, and coming from the background of having seen all these, especially these early ones, I have seen them all. These two stand out, and I think it does set a precedent, especially for the following few years, because they're just different films. It's just different styles, but these two definitely set a standard of like, this is what it means to be a Best Picture winner. This is, these stand out and they're important. They do a lot to promote filmmaking. They do a lot for the industry, and they show what can be done in the format of film.
I concur. Ben, do you have any final thoughts or wrap-ups of Sunrise and Wings?
My only last comment I want to make is, if you're listening to this podcast, you should go watch these movies. And maybe you're listening to this podcast to not have to watch these, but at least watch one of them. It doesn't matter which one, because they're both really good. And I think that you as the audience would enjoy them both. And you're going to learn something new while watching them.
Definitely. I think you can follow along this podcast, like we said, as almost a film school, to learn from all these films, to understand the context and period of the time, and why that film was worthy for the Academy Award, or why at least the Academy thought so. And I think as we progress, we learn more just about not only filmmaking, more about the film industry. We learn more about ourselves and what we enjoy in the art form in general.
Absolutely. I think me and John have taken the time to talk about both Wings and Sunrise has made a really good basis of moving forward with this podcast. So keep listening wherever you get your podcasts, no matter how you listen to it, where you're listening to it, when. Keep checking us out, because we have a really interesting one next week.
I'm John.
I'm Ben. And this is Worthy.
Thanks for listening to Worthy, the breakdown of every Best Picture winner from past to present. Listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on Instagram at Worthy Podcast, on Twitter at Worthy Pod, and on Facebook at Worthy Podcast. Any inquiries can be submitted to worthysubmissions@gmail.com. That's worthysubmissions@gmail.com.